Parliament currently by
Okay, well, both anthems played there, and the President will go on to inspect the troops. But joining me now is the Democrat Congressman Bill Keating, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Welcome to you. We are just viewing pictures of the President inspecting troops at the Irish President's official residence in Phoenix Park. I wonder if you can tell us how important you think it is that the President is here on the island of Ireland at this particular time.
Well, I think it's important. We were there. I was leading a congressional delegation just a few months ago, and we went to Northern Ireland and Ireland as well. And I think it's an important time to remember the Good Friday Agreement, which the U.S. takes great pride in, and we're an indispensable party of.
I think we've lost the line to Congressman Bill Keating. Can you still hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. I guess you could hear all the music in the backgrounds and the troops as we're speaking. Sorry, Jillian.
Sorry, do continue.
I do think it's an important time, number one, to remember the Good Friday Agreement and the success that's there, as well as to be a good friend of UK and the EU and Ireland as well. It's an important time of unanimity, looking at the modern world that we're in now, not just back 25 years where we're confronting a crisis with Russia in Europe and their aggressiveness and illegal war with Ukraine and the threat of China. So I think this is an important trip for many angles.
And historically, what part do you think the United States has played in reaching the point of the Good Friday Agreement?
Well, I've heard from UK and from Ireland as well that we were an indispensable party. I do think that I can just speak from my own personal experience. It's inspirational, even though there's not fully implemented to date, and even though there's creeping violence that's a concern to date, M15 just increased an alert, I think, just recently. But as I've gone to Middle Eastern countries and around the world, and they seem that they're beyond hope at any kind of reconciliation, any kind of end of the conflict, I've always personally pointed to the Good Friday Agreement, where people said there's no hope, no chance, and that this occurred. So I think it's an inspirational, and it even goes beyond UK and beyond Ireland, the lesson of Good Friday. And I've taken it to other countries as well. And that's why I've taken a particular interest in our committee leading initiatives to talk about the Good Friday Agreement, to remember it, but also to make sure that we're continuing to implement those agreements as we go forward.
And what do you think the President will achieve by being here on this 25th anniversary of the agreement?
Well, I think let's remember that every leader is still a person and an individual and a family person. And I think he takes great pride himself, as I do, and so many Americans take pride coming from other countries. So many from Europe, so many of us from Europe and the diasporas that are there. So I think let's indulge him to, if you will, take a trip home. And I think that's part of it. And I think in the U.S., a lot of people here really appreciate that. There's so many people that go back to their European countries that they came from with a great sense of pride. And so I think we all share that as we look at the president in Ireland. But I also think he's trying to reassure the European Union as a whole, Ireland, UK, our great allies, that we're here. And every time a president comes to Europe, I think we're reassuring a relationship that's so important right now in this world. We can look backwards, but we have to look forward. And the threats we have today, the US can't do it alone. The European Union can't do it alone. The UK can't do it alone. But together we can meet these challenges. So I think that reinforcement's always important.
And do you think his presence will go some way to the restoration of power sharing at Stormont?
I think ultimately that's going to be decided by the parties involved. I also met with all 5 parties in Northern Ireland. I met with Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris. I think that as I came away from that meeting just a short time ago, the people are ahead of some of their officials right now. I think the will of the people are ahead. And I think the president's visit is just going to, I think, reinforce that will of the people to go forward, to form a government again. This is a tremendous opportunity. I came away from that recent visit. Northern Ireland's right on the cusp of an explosion, not the kind that we remember, in the 25 years or more back to the Troubles, but an economic explosion. People that have gone with us for decades look back and saw tourism. They saw the economy growing when we were there just a short time ago. And with the 2 markets coming together there, that if the Windsor framework goes forward, Northern Ireland's just going to have not just a renaissance, but a explosion of economic activity, which would be wonderful for Northern Ireland, the people there. And I think that's important.
Yeah, we're just seeing shots of the president introducing Michael D. Higgins, the Irish president, to Anthony Blinken there and members of the American delegation. How will this visit be played out? How will it be received in the United States of America?
Well, it'll be received by so many of us whose families came from Europe. As one more example, myself, grandparents coming from Ireland. I think it'll be reinforcing their feelings, what they feel themselves, and there'll be a rekindling of our own experiences personally, because we are a country of immigrants in the United States. So I think that is part of the feeling that's there in a personal sense. In the political sense, I think it's important right now because we're looking at threats from China and from Russia, and we're looking at our allies, our closest allies in Europe, and realizing that this is an important time. And what we have facing us is much more of a threat in a global sense than probably anything since World War II. So we're looking at this as a positive feeling. I think it's well received by people in the United States, not just in the very narrow prism of person of Irish heritage going back, but rather President of the United States going back to Europe, to our allies, and that transatlantic connection that's so important now. It's brought peace and prosperity since World War II, unrivaled in world history. But it's in danger now from threats with China and Russia. And I think Americans view his visit as solidifying that transatlantic alliance.
It hasn't been officially confirmed whether President Biden will run again. There have been hints from himself that he quite possibly could do so. What would you say to those who might describe this visit and all it entails as electioneering on his part?
Well, I don't think it is. I think really it was meant to coincide with the anniversary date, at least in that period of time. the anniversary date of the Good Friday Agreement. So I think that's where the timing came in. But it couldn't come at a better time now, again, to really make sure those bonds with the EU, with the UK, with each individual European country remain strong. So I think the timing is really one of the anniversary date, but also the reinforcement of how important that transatlantic bond is right now.
Well, they are just going inside. Congressman, we're just going to talk to some of the pictures happening at the moment. David, they're going back into the House now, I believe.
Yes, and they will make their way to the garden behind Áras an Uachtaráin, the residence of the President, where President Joe Biden, we understand, will be involved in a number of symbolic ceremonies, a tree planting and the ringing of the peace bell that marks the signing of the Good Friday Agreement 25 years ago. But he's been all smiles through these handshakes. Clearly an opportunity for President Biden to introduce President Michael D. Higgins and his wife Sabina to the US delegation, as well as the Irish President introducing some significant people from the Republic of Ireland, including the Chief of Staff, the Garda Commissioner, the Foreign Affairs Minister, and I also saw the Agriculture Minister, Charlie McConalogue, who, of course, is a man who has had a lot on his hands in recent months. His constituency includes Creeshla in County Donegal, the scene of that explosion at the end of last year when 10 people were tragically killed. So it's really been an opportunity for, again, to emphasise the close connection between the United States and Ireland, and we're going to see that throughout this entire visit, not just at a political level, but as the President personally continues to talk about coming home, as again he's expressed in the Visitors' Book today.
And once the symbolic tree planting and bell ringing has taken place, will there be an opportunity for him to sit down and discuss with President Higgins?
I think it's important to remember that while they both hold the title President, they are very different roles, in that in the United States he's not just head of state, but he is a political president, whereas Michael D. Higgins, the office he holds is similar to that of the monarch in the United Kingdom. While he signs off on bills and acts of parliament and various other things, he doesn't have really a political role. Now, some might suggest, as a former senator himself and a former Labour activist, he has, during his presidency, sailed fairly close to the wind on some political issues and come close to expressing his views around issues like immigration, for example. So I do suspect they will have some conversation around those matters, but it will be a very private one, because that is not the role of Ireland's head of state.
Well, still with us, Congressman Bill Keating. I think you're at a disadvantage because you can't see the pictures that we can. The delegation have gone into the official residence now, and there will be a couple of symbolic elements to the visit, the planting of a tree and also the ringing of that peace bell first brought in to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. And Bill Keating, your memories of that time when that agreement was signed?
Well, I was younger, and I was just a state legislator in Massachusetts, in the state of Massachusetts in the U.S. I was thinking, I went back to my own visit back to Ireland with my father. My father hadn't been, his parents came from Ireland, and I took him as a young man to a visit, and what that meant personally. And as I looked at the president, we take great pride in that relationship and never forget it. But also, I'll never forget this. The time I was there many years ago with my own father was the time that Lord Mountbatten was killed. And so it was shocking. Shocking to be over there, shocking to see the stunned nature of that violence, that terrible violence. And so I have that juxtaposed in my own mind as every time I see a scene back to Ireland, I go back myself. So it was very real to me because of that experience, not having lost a loved one like so many other people on both sides did. And when I went recently, we went to the Wave Trauma Center and listened to people. There's a healing that is still going on, and I hope that the president's visit is part of that healing. I think in the U.S., those that were concerned during the times of the Troubles about the violence, looked at this and look at this as we see these scenes as something that the conversation won't be the same as it was then. However, I must mention that there's still work to be done on the Good Friday Agreement.
Yes, aside from the President's visit, what else do you think needs to be done to attain that healing that you speak of?
Well, I think there's legacy issues that still have to be dealt with. I listened to people on both sides of the Troubles that lost loved ones. I heard stories where people still walk down the street. Father was still walking down the street, seeing the people that killed his son indiscriminately and the pain he still has. But I also listened to people on both sides saying we have to come together and heal on this. I think the civic agreements or the civic forums that were part of that agreement would be helpful. And clearly, I think a message that the President of the United States delivered in a very soft way in his visit is the hope that the government comes together in Northern Ireland and reconvenes, reconstitutes itself. Something that I was concerned of when I then, last year talked to Liz Truss in London and expressed a concern that this should be resolved before the elections. And indeed, my fears did come to reality that the government didn't come together after that, and they pointed to the protocol issues as issues to deal with. I hope that the work that's been done on the Windsor framework goes forward. I think there was a great deal of hard work to get to that point, and I think we can get beyond it. And then we can talk about issues that I think have been hung up in the process, trade issues with UK, trade issues with the EU, something I think would be beneficial transatlantically.
Okay, Congressman Bill Keating, thank you very much for sharing your analysis with us. Well, still with me, our Ireland correspondent David Blevins. We're seeing shots of the beautiful grounds of Phoenix Park, but the delegation now will be inside before they go on to the tree planting and the ringing of the peace bell.
Yes, and given how long it is taking them to get from the front of the building to the back, I suspect the conversation you referred to a moment ago may be happening right now over a cup of tea between the inspecting of the Guard and the ceremonial elements of this visit. But we did see a few pictures while our guest was with us of plaques at the foot of the trees in the grounds of Áras an Uachtaráin, some of them marking the presidencies of former heads of state, including Eamon de Valera himself. And there were two, I noticed, one marking a tree planted by Barack Obama, the last American president to visit here, and also before that, one marking a tree planted by someone called John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who is arguably, or who was arguably, the most Irish American of all presidents. The Kennedys having made it from Wexford on the east coast of Ireland to the White House in the space of just one generation. And many would say that Joe Biden actually is the most Irish American president since John F. Kennedy.
And those trees are flourishing, doing very well. So let's hope the tree that Joe Biden does just as well, the tree that he plants.
That'll be the Irish rain, the soft Irish rain that gives us 40 shades of green, Gillian.
We experienced a lot of that yesterday. David, for the moment, thank you. Well, that is all from Dublin for the moment. We hand you back now to London.
Gillian, thanks very much indeed. We'll rejoin you a bit later, but in the meantime, let's fill you in on the rest of the day's news. And a man has appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court after being extradited from Pakistan in connection with the killing of PC Sharon Beshnevsky in 2005. Sharon Beshnevsky was 38 when she was gunned down while responding to a robbery at a travel agent in Bradford almost 2 decades ago. The mother of 3 children and 2 stepchildren had only served 9 months with West Yorkshire Police when she died. Well, let's cross live then to our correspondent Aisha Zahid. So, Aisha, what happened at this hearing then?
Well, Purandita Khan appeared here at Westminster Magistrates Court earlier this morning. He was flanked by security, dressed in a navy tracksuit. He only spoke to confirm his name and his date of birth. Of course, he's facing 6 allegations dating back to nearly 20 years ago after being extradited from Pakistan to the UK for these and it includes one charge of the murder of PC Sharon Beshenivsky. She was a police officer for Yorkshire Police Force. She served for only 9 months before she was fatally shot after responding to a robbery at a travel agent's in Bradford. The incident happened in November back in 2005, and as well as this charge, he also faces several others: a charge of robbery, 2 counts of possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life, and 2 counts of possessing a prohibited weapon. Now, as I mentioned, he was extradited from Pakistan to the UK. These charges were initially authorised by the CPS back in 2006. That's when the extradition warrant was also issued, and it wasn't until 2018 where an arrest warrant was issued in Pakistan. He was eventually arrested there in 2020. Now, we have had a statement from the Crown Prosecution Service in which they say, since Purandita Khan was arrested in Pakistan in 2020, our specialist prosecutors have been working closely with our Pakistani partners to complete the legal process in the country so that he could be extradited back to England to face the allegations from almost 20 years ago. So he appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court today. The next hearing is scheduled for Monday at the Old Bailey.
Aisha, thanks very much indeed. Now, there are signs of some progress in the junior doctor strike this afternoon. It now appears that the government is discussing entering arbitration talks with the BMA. Well, joining me now with the latest from Leeds is our correspondent, Shingi Mararike. So, Shingi, tell us exactly what's happened, and does it look like a step forward has been taken?
Yeah, that's right, Anna. It does look like a step forward has been taken, or at least a step in the right direction. NHS federations are calling on the government to allow ACAS, that arbitration body, an independent public body, to broker talks between themselves and the junior doctors. And the government has confirmed that that is something they're interested in considering. And we have a statement in full from them. In that statement, a Department for Health and Social Care spokesperson said, the Health and Social Care Secretary has been clear, his door is open, and he remains willing to engage constructively, but that a demand of 35%, which would involve some junior doctors receiving a £20,000 pay rise, is unreasonable in the current economic context. It then goes on, we've been engaging with ACAS during this dispute and remain open to